Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, I'm back today with an update on the Dirty Dozen. For those of you that have been with me for a while, you'll know that this is my flagship content, the series that started my channel off a year ago, and I wanted to pass on my immense gratitude to all of you for being such ardent supporters of this whole process. In addition to the Dirty Dozen content, I've got a thank you code to give you all, a character giveaway, as well as some other goodies and useful bits of gameplay strategy as outlined on screen. Everything is timestamped for your perusal if you want to skip ahead. For those of you that are new to the channel, you might be wondering what all the fuss is about. The Dirty Dozen is essentially a tier list that I have put together with collaboration and input from 6 of the top players in the game. 5 of them are with me in the Alpha Legion guild, and we're fresh off the back of another top finish in the guild raids. Hopefully that lends some credibility to what we're putting on offer. To complete the group, Tawin joins us and has been a staple on my channel for some time in providing high-level insight and analysis. We've created an infographic that analyses how useful each character is in guild raids as well as PvP, because at its core, Tacticus is a game of resource management. The hope is that by identifying who is good, you can invest your resources wisely and maximize your progress. The video series is updated every few months or whenever there is a new bit of content that needs to be analysed. Therefore, the impetus for this one is the release of the Rogal Dorn battle tank. We've updated character rankings and provided gameplay footage for both high and low level rosters about how to approach the boss. The big caveat or disclaimer here is that we've really only had about a week to collect data and analyse this new boss. I'm keen to put stuff out earlier to help you all progress, but please understand that these scores might change, particularly next season when the boss moves to Legendary 5 difficulty and we have to reconstruct our approach. Before we get onto the infographic, a quick word on how this is all calculated. I run a Google Sheet with my collaborators who give me their own independent scores for each character across each metric. This is then fed into a master sheet, averaged out, and then I have the final say in tweaking the numbers before they appear in front of you. And people seem to love this kind of content. I started my channel in January 2023 with the Dirty Dozen infographic, and that has grown and evolved over time into a more polished product. The channel has now had over 500,000 views and almost 7,000 subscribers, which I never thought would happen when I began doing this as a hobby. As a thank you, the code DOODOOD500 earns you all a little freebie. I hope to provide more codes as I hit further milestones, so please feel free to hit that subscribe button and be kept up to date. On screen you can see the new Dirty Dozen. The look and layout has had to be updated slightly to reflect the increasing number of guild bosses. Within each cell, you'll see how they score against each boss individually, with an aggregated guild raid score in the red bubble at the bottom of the frame. The PvP score is then done in blue and added to the red number for a total that is used in the character rankings. You may have noticed that I'm being quite harsh in my traffic light color grading system. 5 gets you a deep, vibrant green, but once you're down in 2.5 the color is already a dark red. That is intentionally skewed because I want the characters that are good to really easily and visually declare themselves. Eldryon remains king and is not removed from his top spot on these rankings. His passive ability, Doom, remains the most powerful in the game, both for the ease at which it is applied to enemies, as well as the bonus damage you gain on your characters. In position 2, we have Ragnar, who is a new addition to Tacticus since the last video in October. Ragnar's value and success stems from 2 particular aspects of his kit. Firstly, his passive lets him gain an additional 3 hits whenever he moves into contact with his target. For bosses like the Screamer Killer, who can throw Ragnar away, as well as the Rogal Dorn battle tank, who is constantly moving, this really lets you trigger his passive often and easily. This combines beautifully with his base attack, which has 7 hits, bringing the total to 10 hits per attack. The name of the game for maximizing damage is multiple hits plus damage buffs, like Eldryon's Doom, and Ragnar is just an excellent choice to take advantage of this. Snowprint have done really well in making this character feel like a powerful legendary character, and it would be great if they adopted the same approach for other factions. Marnius Calgar comes in at number 3, largely courtesy of his powerful passive ability. It applies a large amount of bonus damage to all hits by adjacent allies and really lets you rack up the damage in guild raids. Morgan is number 4 and fits in as the strongest ranged damage dealer in Tacticus. Reasonably high damage stats coupled with good Pierce and Eldari synergy already make him a top pick. The cherry on top is when you can take advantage of his heavy weapon trait that gives him a bonus 25% damage boost for remaining stationary. For that reason he falls away slightly for the Rogal Dorn battle tank boss fight because the constant movement makes it slightly harder to take advantage of this trait. Aethana flies up the rankings this time around because of how much she excels against the battle tank. I'll dive more into this in the Rogal Dorn section, but the key to success against this boss is achieving critical hits so that you can bypass that lethal area of effect attack, Gunner's Kill on Sight. Clearly, if you can make it around to the back of the tank, it's far easier to turn this ability off. However, there are going to be situations, as I'm sure many of you have already learned, where you won't have a choice but to try and score those extra hits and crits from front or side positions. Aethana really goes a long way here, and her passive can give you that bonus crit chance which might tip the scales in your favour. Bellator is in at number 6 and is really the best of the original summoners. His Inceptors let you put up nice surrounds on enemies like the Turvigon, Hive Tyrant and Gazgul, which let you pin them in place and then take advantage of the fact that all of the Inceptors have 6 hits. Revas is in rank 7 and is the first Tau we have come across in the top 12. She is here largely due to her multi-hit attack and passive ability. Between her basic attack and her passive ability, she can get 9 hits each turn. All you really need to do is provide some damage buffers in order for her to shine. She is limited by the Tau trait of close combat weakness, which can unexpectedly result in a fairly big damage nerf if you're not careful with her positioning. Thaddeus Noble is next as an all-round decent ranged damage dealer. He has a very high damage stat and works well alongside Moghan Ra, but is a bit more on the fragile side. As an Astra Militarum character, he is unusable against Rogal Dorn, which sees his score and ranking suffer for this edition. Numbers 9 and 10 are a Tau duo. Shosil does not really excel against any particular boss. He does high damage, single hit attacks through his drones, and while on paper this might seem okay, you get much more bang for your buck by using multi-hitters and damage buffs. Onshi is best in slot against Tyranid bosses, where his active ability lets you recharge a key active. Against the Tyranids, this means recharging another use of Bellator's active ability, letting you surround the Tyranids for maximum value. Ulf is a character that has really seen a standing rise as our understanding and analysis has evolved over the last 4 months. We found him to be incredible against bosses like the Screamer Killer due to his passive ability, Savage Killer. Each time the boss uses an active ability, Ulf punishes them with an attack, and this adds up over the course of a battle. In this gameplay clip, you get a flavour of how you can really maximise things against a boss like Screamer Killer. With the correct play, you can get Ragnar thrown away, only to keep charging back in and gain his bonus hits through his passive. All the while this is happening, Ulf is smashing away at the boss through his passive ability and dealing a lot of extra out-of-turn damage. Finally, Abraxas. This isn't as much a nod to Abraxas as it is to the Psyker team or composition. I have a whole segment on this later in the video, but essentially Abraxas forms a key part of Psyker teams alongside Neurothrope and Yazagor. I'll go into things in more depth in the Psyker segment. With the Dirty Dozen out of the way, we have the rankings extended to the Tainted 30, which is the top 30 characters in the game. Again, lots of darker hues of orange and red here, but just to help me illustrate the areas where characters really excel. I'll leave this on the screen for a while for you to digest, and I'll point out a few things. The 3 Admech characters are all reasonably good and I think would be higher in the overall rankings leaderboard if this scoring system accounted for guild boss primes. At the moment, we don't factor that into our calculations. I couldn't do this type of content without the tireless and invaluable support from my contributors. Tawin, Archon, Waffles, Legend, Puntier and Probzed. I just wanted to thank you again for your friendship and diligence in making this project happen. With the rankings out of the way, I wanted to talk you through some approaches to Rogal Dorn, with different teams depending on the stage of the game you're at. I think this boss is really defined by how well you can deal with the ability Gunner's Kill on Sight. You're incentivized to bring highly mobile units with high pierce and ideally infiltrate in order to get out of this field of fire. Conversely, summons will really hurt your team as their movement is AI controlled and can cause multiple instances of this ability triggering against your team. In this gameplay video, we're showing you how a Diamond 2 team does against the level 1 Rogal Dorn battle tank. It's an endgame team with a lot of legendary characters and again at Diamond 2, but the principles here are consistent. You can see that the legendary 1 boss doesn't really hurt our characters at Diamond 2, and we're able to move in and out of that firing zone without much issue. The key to this composition really is the combination of Ragnar, Aethana and Janezar. They're all powerful characters who get to take advantage of this weak rear armor and deliver heavy crits against the Rogal Dorn battle tank. As the boss lays down this firing field, you can see that sometimes we are forced to try our luck and crit against it on the front armor. However, once the boss moves past, you can see that how Ragnar, Janezar and Aethana really take advantage of that weak rear armor and maximize crit damage, for a final run that does about 360k damage. This next clip has been shared with me by Tawan and illustrates how to deal with this boss when you maybe don't have as much of a legendary setup. The characters here are all either gold 2 or gold 3, and you can just see how they try and cope with this legendary 1 boss. Again, he runs down the middle, and what we're aiming to do is with our more mobile characters like Harkin and Bellator, take advantage of that weak rear armor to turn off Gunner's kill on sight. Then it's a case of really just moving around, hitting the boss, and trying to take as much advantage of that weak rear armor as possible. Here, Archimatos' summons help deal with the extra guardsmen, although the positioning could have been improved slightly as Archie has been run over and killed by the tank. You can see here how the summons can actually sometimes come back to bite us as Bellator's Inceptors all move out of that initial field of fire and cause a lot of damage to our team. The rest of the battle is fairly unexciting. We let the summons do their thing, and as our depleted forces continue to do damage, we end up with a final score of about 80,000 with this limited roster and gear cap. Thanks again, Tawan. I'm going to cover the Psyker team next with some text slides initially before showing you how the team does against the Rogal Dorn. The team really is centered around the Neurothrope and its passive ability. I found that the best complements to this ability are Abraxas, who lets you charge it up before you deliver a final massive blow with Yazagor. So how does it all tie together? The Neuroparasite ability puts a counter on the target that can increase up to 15 whenever the target takes psychic damage or would become suppressed. Abraxas has an active that summons demons next to him and can immediately attack the boss. Abraxas' passive ability gives these same demons psychic damage as well, so you get to create loads more summons as well as increase the Neuroparasite counter rapidly. The final blow is done in conjunction with Yazagor. Neuroparasite gives the Neurothrope bonus damage every time it does psychic damage. Yazagor's active gives the Neurothrope another hit of psychic damage, allowing you to trigger this damage bonus from Neuroparasite for a second time in one attack. Some simple math is laid out here on screen. At Diamond 2, the Neurothrope does just shy of 2,000 damage. At maximum stacks, Neuroparasite gives 33,000 damage. We can double that through Sorceress Facade and come up to around 70,000 damage with just Neurothrope and Yazagor. Let's say we manage to put the Neurothrope on a high ground hex, then that number goes up to over 100k with one attack. And this is before we start thinking about adding other variables into the equation like Ahriman or Roswitha. All of this is to say that the Neurothrope is a really powerful character, but doesn't make it onto the Dirty Dozen because it isn't usable against 3 guild raid bosses. This gameplay footage illustrates how the Psyker team does against Rogal Dorn and is courtesy of a community player called K-Stud. Thanks again. The initial turns are spent by our team clearing off the additional guardsman summons to clear the battlefield for our team and their summons. The Neurothrope lays down the Neuroparasite counter, and then we start to see that counter increment upwards with Abraxas using the active ability. The next few turns are an exercise in adding on Neuroparasite counts through all of your other characters. It doesn't look initially like the damage counter is going up particularly highly, but the damage with this composition comes in the later turns when the Neuroparasite is fully stacked. Here you can see Yazagor using his active ability to grant the Neurothrope a second hit through his ordinarily one hit and normal attack. Now clearly there's lots of room for experimentation and developing these strategies and rosters. My instinct is that the crit team with Ragnar Blackmane will start to fall away against higher levels of the boss when the armor starts to scale up considerably. The Neurothrope team, being largely psychic damage based, may have potential, at least more so than the crit team on higher levels. Thanks for sticking it through with me. You'll know by now that these videos are supported by Snowprint in the form of character giveaways. Given how useful and critical Aethana is to success against the Rogal Dorn tank, I have elected to choose her as my giveaway character. Leave a comment in the video description and I'll pick 6 winners, either a full unlock or 50 shards to give away. Make sure you've got your notifications enabled so that when I choose my winner you can claim your prize. If you've enjoyed this video and my content, please consider entering my referral code as seen on screen. It earns you 100 blackstone and supports me in the work that I do. It is single use though, so choose who you support wisely. Finally, if you're interested in joining a competitive cluster, then drop by the Eye of Terror Discord via link in the video description. We just came first place last season in guild raids, and our sister guilds all do remarkably well through information and strategy sharing. Bye for now.
Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!